Imagine a world, and I want you to really try and visualize this, even if it feels, well, impossible. Imagine your rent is zero, just gone. No mortgage, no landlord knocking on the door, taxes, they don't exist. The calendar you use has 13 months, not 12. And the entire judicial system, all the courts, the lawyers, all of it is replaced by one simple rule: do no harm.
It sounds like a utopia. Or, depending on how attached you are to your Google Calendar, maybe a bit of a fever dream.
Exactly. It feels like another planet. And that is exactly where we're going today. We're looking at a source that is, honestly, it is one of the hardest things I've had to classify in a long time. It's called the Unified Kingdom, a vision for native intelligence.
And we should be really clear up front for everyone listening. This is not a government white paper.
No.
It's not some polished policy proposal from a think tank.
Yeah.
When you read this, it feels much more like a passionate stream of consciousness manifesto.
Yes.
It's part economic blueprint, part spiritual plea, and, part personal diary of a man who sounds like he is standing right on the edge.
Oh, absolutely. The energy is frantic. It's beautiful in places, but at times it's just completely chaotic. He's not polishing his words for a board meeting. He's shouting them from the rooftops because he feels like he has no other choice. It's just raw.
So our mission for this deep dive is to unpack this vision. We're going to look at his argument that modern society is basically a cult of normality that is making us physically and mentally sick.
And then walk through his radical plan to fix it. His plan for what he calls a domain of kinship, where we reconnect with our native intelligence.
I love that phrase, domain of kinship.
Me too. But before we get to the solution, we have to understand the problem. So let's jump into that first big theme, the diagnosis. Why does he think we need this unified kingdom to begin with? What's so wrong with the one we have?
Well, it all starts with this idea he calls native intelligence. He argues that at our core, we are native indigenous beings of this planet, or spaceship Earth, as he sometimes calls it.
Right.
But the problem, his central thesis, is that we have been civilized out of existence.
Okay, let's pause on that. Civilized out of existence. That's a dramatic phrase. Does he just mean we spend too much time on our phones?
It goes deeper.
Yeah.
Much deeper than that. He's talking about a fundamental disconnection from our own nature. He describes this thing he calls the cult of normality.
The cult of normality?
Yeah. Basically, he argues that we spend our entire lives holding it in, pretending to be these rational, productive, normal citizens. We're all acting in a play that we didn't write, following rules that don't actually serve us just to keep up appearances.
So it's like we're all wearing a mask.
Exactly. And wearing that mask is heavy. It crushes you. And this is where the text gets incredibly personal. This isn't just theory for him. The author admits right at the start that he has recently been registered as sick for the first time in his life.
Well,
He even says he's getting money from the state because he is, in his words, sick in the head.
that really stopped me in my tracks. Usually when someone writes a manifesto to fix the world, they present themselves as the sane one. But he starts by saying, hey, I'm broken.
But, and here's where it gets really fascinating, he completely flips that. He quotes that famous idea, it is no measure of health to be well-adjusted to a profoundly sick world.
Right.
He's arguing that his breakdown, his so-called sickness, is actually a rational reaction to an insane system.
That's such a powerful reframing. So if the world is crazy, then the person who cracks up is maybe the only one reacting appropriately.
That's his point. He suggests maybe we're all a bit mental, but we're just hurting ourselves by pretending we aren't. He talks about how indigenous cultures, these cultures of native intelligence, always had space for mystery, for people who were not normal. There was a role for the shaman, the mystic.
The person who saw things differently.
Right, but we've stamped that out. We've brainwashed ourselves into thinking we are just tax-paying units, rather than, as he puts it, the infinite experiencing itself.
For the infinite experiencing itself. That spiritual side is huge in this document. He says death isn't an ending, and because we are all part of this infinite consciousness, we can't really escape each other.
He says we're stuck with each other for eternity. So we might as well stop banging our heads against a brick wall and, build a paradise instead.
Which brings us to the practical side. Because for all the talk about infinite consciousness, he pivots to some very specific, very hard-nosed economic ideas. And I have to say, some of these made me do a double take.
Oh, the economics are where he really goes for the jugular of the current system. And his number one target, land ownership.
Okay, walk me through this, because this is the part where I started thinking, wait a minute, does he mean I can't own my house?
It's a crucial distinction. He calls for the abolition of property rights in land. Not your personal stuff. He's clear you can own your toothbrush, your car, even the building you live in.
Sure.
But the earth beneath it, the soil itself, he says that belongs to everyone.
He uses this incredible analogy that I just have to share. It made me laugh out loud, but it's also kind of profound. He says that humans fighting over who owns land is like fleas arguing over who owns the dog.
It's such a vivid image, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, you can just picture it, these tiny fleas on the back of a huge dog. And one flea draws a little line in the fur and says, okay, this square millimeter is mine. You have to pay me rent to sit here.
And the dog has no idea what's going on.
Right. And the dog is just looking at them like, what are you doing?
That is exactly the perspective he's trying to get us to take. He's zooming out to the planet. Our borders and property deeds are just scribbles in the fur. And he actually grounds this in some real economic theory. He specifically mentions Henry George.
Henry George?
He was a 19th century economist, very well known in his time. And his whole idea was exactly this. You own what you create. So if you build a house, the doghouse in our analogy, you own that. That's your labor.
Sure, that makes sense.
But nobody created the land. The land is a common inheritance. So Henry George argued, and this author argues, that we are denizens, not just citizens. And when we're divorced from the land and when we have to pay just to exist on the planet we were born on, we become spiritually homeless.
That does make sense, philosophically, but practically. I mean, if you get rid of rent and mortgages, which he wants to do immediately, by the way, how does the economy even function? If I stop paying my mortgage, the bank collapses.
And if the bank collapses, money disappears.
Right.
Well, he tackles that head on. And this is where we have to get a little technical, but bear with me. He talks about something called the Bradbury Pound.
I looked this up. This is a real historical thing, right? From World War I?
Exactly. When the war broke out, there was a financial crisis. Banks were in trouble. So the British Treasury, led by a man named Bradbury, issued its own currency that was totally debt-free. It was backed by the credit of the nation, not by gold or private bank debt.
Okay, explain it to me like I'm 5. What's the real difference between the money in my wallet now and a Bradbury pound?
The money in your wallet came into existence when someone, somewhere, took out a loan. In our system, money is debt. If everyone paid off their debts tomorrow, there would be almost no money left in circulation.
And there's always interest, so there's always more debt owed than money that exists. It creates a game of musical chairs.
Someone has to lose.
Yeah.
He calls it a finance of scarcity. He argues that banks just print money out of nowhere to create interest that can never be fully paid back. The Bradbury pound, on the other hand, represents sovereign money. It's issued by the community, backed by the real wealth and infrastructure of the nation, the roads, the hospitals, the people.
He has this great line about how the current economy is like everyone is holding their breath. We're hoarding money, terrified of the future. And he argues if we just exhaled, if we let the value flow, we'd realize we're actually in a time of incredible abundance.
He just calls money a token. He says we could print monopoly money if we wanted to, as long as we all agree it represents the sweat equity and the heart we put into caring for each other.
Right. He even suggests local currencies like a Lewis pound to trade services. Though, to be fair, he does point out a funny flaw in that plan.
He does.
He says if everyone starts treating services in a barter economy, you might end up with a glut of massages.
Laughs. Right. Everyone is offering massages, but nobody's baking the bread.
Exactly. It's a rare moment of practical self-awareness in the text, which I appreciated. But it really highlights his vision of a unified kingdom lifestyle. It's not just about economics, it's about how we spend our days. If we aren't working 40 hours a week to pay a mortgage for land we should already have access to, what are we doing instead?
So let's paint that picture. In this unified kingdom, how does your day start?
You start it with the sun. He proposes that everyone, or at least crowds of people, should get up and watch the sunrise together every single day.
He asks, why are there not crowds of people watching the sun come up over the sea? He thinks it's just mental that we don't celebrate the simple fact that we woke up again.
It's about building community through shared ritual. Instead of rushing to a train, you're standing with your neighbors, watching the day begin.
And that ritual extends to time itself. This is where he brings in the calendar reform. He wants to scrap the Gregorian calendar we all use.
And replace it with what?
A 13-month calendar.
Wait, 13 months? How does that even work?
Well, it's designed to track the moon. If you have 13 months of exactly 28 days, that adds up to 364 days. It aligns perfectly with lunar cycles and, as he notes, with biological cycles. It's consistent. Every month starts on the same day of the week.
But a year is 365 days. You're You're missing a day.
Ah, that's the best part. He proposes 1 day at a time every year, a free day. It's not Monday, it's not Sunday, it's just a day, a global holiday where the calendar doesn't
Oh,
count.
I love that. A day where time stands still. It completely fits his whole vibe of stepping outside the machine.
It does. But the lifestyle changes go deeper than just sunrises and calendars.
Yeah.
He has a really scathing critique of the education system.
Oh, yeah.
He compares modern schools to forcing horses to drink water they don't want. He wants to replace them with open learning centers.
So basically, let kids learn what they want when they want. If a kid wants to build a robot, let them build a robot. Stop locking them in rooms and forcing them to memorize facts they don't care about.
But the most poignant part of his lifestyle critique, and I think we need to sit with this for a second, was about elder care.
Yeah, this part was heavy.
He talks about care homes with just such deep sadness. He describes them as places of isolation, filled with masked faces, where the elderly are just enduring life rather than living it.
That phrase, masked faces, really hit me, especially post-pandemic, but even just metaphorically. He asks, who has been to a care home lately? Is there anything about them which is good? It's just a brutal question.
It is. His vision is a world where the elderly are integrated back into the community, getting sunlight, fresh air, and just human touch and connection. He's essentially asking, why do we hide away the people who have lived the longest?
Yeah.
Why is the end of life an endurance test instead of a celebration?
It all comes back to his core belief. We should be enjoying our lives. He keeps asking, why don't we put wheels in motion that would allow all of us to be liberated? He sees the current grind, the rat race, the school rush hour, as this tragic waste of human potential.
So, okay, we have the diagnosis, the cult of normality. We have the vision, the unified kingdom with no rent, sovereign money, 13 months. But here's the million-dollar question, or I guess the Bradbury Pound question. How do we get there?
Right. Because usually when people talk about overthrowing the system, they're talking about protests or voting or, unfortunately, violence. But the author, he doesn't want any of that.
No, absolutely not. He explicitly says we do not have to even fight this. He says we can dance this into existence.
Dancing it into existence. I mean, it sounds lovely, but practically, what's the mechanism? How do you dance a bank out of existence?
Well, his primary method is actually fasting.
Fasting, like a hunger strike.
Exactly. He proposes a fast for freedom. The idea is that if a significant number of people, he mentions a tipping point, maybe 20% of the population, simply stopped consuming food, it would break the supply chains. It would stop the pressure on the system.
So it's passive resistance on a biological level. He says if we all stopped eating for a week, we would be tripping our heads off together and laughing all the way to the bank. He sees it as this collective spiritual awakening that resets everything.
He believes it would shock the system to a halt. But this is where the text gets so incredibly human and, frankly, kind of messy. Because he's trying to plan this revolution in real time as he's writing, and you can just see the cracks in the plan starting to show.
Oh, this was my favorite part because it felt so real. He starts by writing with this incredible urgency. The time is now W. He wants to start the fast on January 1st. He's like, I am in it. This is it.
But then reality sets in. He basically looks out the window. He realizes it's January. It's freezing cold.
Yeah.
And he has children to feed.
He literally bargains with himself on the page. He goes from let's do it now W to, well, I have to make food for the kids tomorrow. Then he suggests the spring equinox. And finally, he lands on the summer solstice because, and I'm quoting here, it's warmer and more fun to fast outside.
Laughs. It's funny, but it also reveals that internal conflict we all feel, doesn't it? We want radical change. We want to overthrow the system. But also, we have to make dinner. It's cold outside.
And we have bills to pay. This is where we have to ground this in the author's own reality, because it's easy to dismiss this as just some guy with his head in the clouds. But there is a very specific, very hard reality driving all of this.
Yes. And this was the moment that completely changed how I read the entire text. Towards the end, he reveals his financial situation. He has exactly 27 pence in his bank account.
Wait, 27 pence, not pounds.
27 pence, less than a candy bar. And the Unified Kingdom bank account he set up, it has 20 pounds in it.
Wow. That changes everything. Suddenly, this isn't a philosophy, it's a survival note.
It is. He is fasting for freedom, yes. But he admits he is also fasting because he has no money. He literally can't afford to eat.
There's this list he makes, the list of his riches. It was just heartbreaking and beautiful at the same time.
It really was. He lists a charity shop sofa, an old pair of speakers, a spoon, a saucepan. He says, I am so grateful for the unbelievable riches in which I live, while admitting he has less cash than someone on the street.
It creates this incredible tension. He's calling for the end of money, calling it a token we should just discard, but then at the very end, he asks the listener for money. For funding, for AI tools, for marketing, or just for food.
And he sees the paradox. He even admits he might have a savior complex. He asks, am I just an abject narcissist out of control? He's incredibly vulnerable. He's not pretending to be some perfect leader. He's just a guy who has had enough.
And that vulnerability is what makes it so compelling. If this was some polished paper from a millionaire, you'd roll your eyes. But because it's a man admitting he's sick and broke and desperate, yet still dreaming of a paradise where we all watch the sunrise together, it forces you to listen.
It does. It forces you to confront the question, is he crazy? Or is he the only one seeing the situation clearly?
So let's try to synthesize this. We have this text that's a chaotic mix of utopian dreaming, real economic theory like Henry George, and just raw personal desperation. What's the big takeaway?
I think the core message, if you strip away the specifics about 13-month calendars or mass fasting, is about tacit agreements.
Tacit agreements, unspoken rules.
Exactly. The author remembers a headmaster talking about them. Society functions because we all silently agree to the rules. We agree that this piece of paper is money. We agree we have to work 40 hours a week. We agree we have to pay rent for the land we were born on.
And his whole point is that these aren't laws of physics. They aren't gravity.
Right. Gravity doesn't care if you believe in it. But the economy only exists because we all believe in it. He's suggesting that if we just stop telling ourselves that story, the story changes.
He has that brilliant quote about politicians and engineers that I think illustrates this perfectly.
Yes, the Buckminster Fuller one. The idea is if you took all the politicians in the world and put them on a rocket ship and sent them to the moon,
Or threw them into the sea.
right? Or the world would keep on turning. We'd still have electricity, we'd still have food. But if you took all the engineers, the people who actually know how things work, and sent them away, the world would starve and freeze in weeks.
It's such a sharp provocation. It asks us to distinguish between what's real, our skills, our resources, our community, and what is just administrative fluff.
It challenges the cult of normality. It asks you, are you just performing your life to satisfy the administrators? Or are you actually living?
It's a lot to digest. A vision of a domain of kinship where we treat each other like family, not economic units.
And where we stop fighting like fleas over the dog.
We really can't forget the fleas. That image is going to stick with me.
It should. It's the ultimate perspective check.
You know, usually we wrap up with a neat summary, but this text feels so open-ended, it feels wrong to put a bow on it. The author literally ends by asking for a private contract with the listener, asking them to pay to hear the rest of his message. It's a real-life cliffhanger.
It really leaves the ball in your court. Demands a response.
So here's the thought I want to leave you with, inspired by this deep dive. The author suggests that the only thing holding up our version of normality is our willingness to participate in it.
Our willingness to keep signing that tacit agreement every single morning.
Exactly. So look at your life today. Look at the tacit agreements you've signed without even realizing it. The debt you stress over, the schedule you hate. Which one of those is the only thing holding up your version of normal? And what would really happen if you stopped?
What if you just stopped holding your breath?
Hey, thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you next time.